first year as the superintendent of the Boonville School District, but I am a lifelong pirate as I grew up in the Boonville School District community and went to school here my entire life. So I'm really excited to be back and see the direction that our school district is moving towards. We've got a lot of amazing things happening in our district, and we have tremendous students, and we have a dedicated staff, and we have all of those things that combined together just make a fantastic school. Where our struggle though right now is that we need to make sure that we keep it that way and we keep our school district moving in that positive direction. The Board of Education as well as myself have really tried to figure out what it is that we need to do, because we've identified that we have tremendous facility issues, that our facilities aren't what they used to be. So we have a lot of projects slated for the bond and the tax levy issue, and some of the projects that we're looking at for the bond issue, because that can only be used for capital projects, so renovations and repairs to our building, connecting the high school to the career center. And I think not only will that increase possibly participation and high school students participating in BTEC classes, because they're not, it doesn't feel like a separate school. It feels as if it's part of the high school day. But it also makes sure that our students aren't having to go outside.
I go to the BTEC during towards 7th hour, and a lot of times it's really cold and windy like it is today. And it's just kind of, it makes you feel cold by the time you get to class. And also when it's really, really rainy, it gets your stuff wet, and then you get wet too, which is just kind of a pain. And I think that it would be really helpful if I could get to those BTEC classes without having to be in the weather too, because, and also you track water into both buildings, and then it's just not, it makes it harder to keep the buildings clean once you track all that stuff in. And, but yeah, I think that's why it would be really good if they were connected instead of just outdoors to get to BTEC.
Priorities that we've identified are improving and making some significant changes to our science labs at the high school, and then also our 8th grade science lab at LSC, which really is non-existent. It's really just a classroom with some tables.
Remodeling the science lab would mean a lot to me personally, because the current science lab that we have here at Boonville is at least 20 or 30 or even 30 years old or even older, which makes it very difficult to learn new concepts when the labs don't work, different implements aren't working like they're supposed to. So getting newer equipment that works all the time, makes it much easier to learn new concepts.
The chemicals back there in the supply closet are very old, so a lot of them don't even work when we're trying to use them for different laboratory or labs. And there are also, the bottles are so old that contain them that a lot of times the labels on them are faded and we can't really tell exactly what we're using, which is obviously pretty dangerous.
We can't do many experiments or any fun things in this class. There's only a couple outlets in that corner, there's an outlet in that corner, and by his desk, so we can't do anything electrical. There's not a sink to be seen in here, so we can't do anything, basically we can't do any experiments. And even along with that, we have one little storage closet, which isn't really even a closet, it's more of a shelf, where we can't keep our stuff. And we can't do any experiments, any projects, so we're basically having to do a lot of boring work on paper instead of last year in 7th grade where we got to do a lot of different fun experiments. And then also we have a couple leaks in the roof, which can be kind of frustrating sometimes, and that can be kind of an obstacle for us.
We need to make sure that our students have the facilities and they have the tools that they need in their classrooms to learn.
We do a lot of amazing things here in the art room at LSC. My students work really hard learning how to draw, paint, and work with different mediums, and I want them to be able to show off their work. There's no better confidence booster than for a student to see their work displayed and have others enjoy their work as well. So I feel like here I can build that confidence in a unique way compared to other subjects.
I think as a whole that our community sees that investment, and they know that we need to invest those dollars so that we can continue to have high quality public education.
Okay, if the panel would come on up, and do I need to use this mic? Not probably for you, but if they're going to YouTube this, then I'll leave it on. So I'll talk into this. This was excellent. Thank you. Very good. So let me introduce you to the panel, and then we'll get into some questions that I have on some cards here. And I'll just go around, start on the left side over here, Stephanie Green. Stephanie's been here since she was a teenager, mid-teenager. Moved here from Tennessee. She's been a student, been a teacher here. She is now the principal at LSE. And fun job.
It is.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah Marriott, probably almost, they don't need to be identified beyond what they do because Sarah's, no, but this is her first year as being superintendent, and it's been really exciting for us to be a part of her first year and getting to see her evolve and things evolve for her. Josie Johnson may be the outlier in in the familiarity that some of you might have. Josie's a student. She's a junior in high school. She's involved in everything. I'm on a couple of different committees through the school with Josie, and I can tell you, she is smart, and she has really good ideas. So if she gets to express an idea, it's worth hearing. Josie, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Charley Milkman is president of the Board of Education. He's several things in the community. He's an entity that you know. If you've ever heard his voice, you know exactly who's talking, because he has a unique personality that comes right out in his voice. He's a great guy, so Charley, good. And Chad Stonecipher. Chad is a fella that I didn't know. Probably I'm the only last guy in town to didn't know him. But I'm on this committee with him, and I've listened to him a few times. He's a guy that has few words, but when he speaks, the room gets quiet and people listen because he's got good ideas. So I think that you've done a good job of selecting a panel of people to be here. And so we'll begin. And so I have questions. I really hope that these questions elicit questions from you so that you can get up and say your name or tell me, or we'll get the questions going. So first question is for Dr. Marriott. And it says Sarah on it, so I will refer to you as Sarah Marriott because I've known you that longer than I knew you were a doctor.
That's fine.
Well, this is a good question, I think. What is the difference between a no-tax bond issue and a tax levy increase?
So we have both of those issues on the ballot for April, and they're a little bit confusing. So a no-tax bond issue is exactly what it says. It's no additional tax for taxpayers. There's a Missouri state statute, though, that says bond money can only be used for capital projects. So that's probably one of the biggest questions that people ask is, you're asking for $9 million, why can't you use that for salaries? Well, Missouri state statute says you can only use that money for repairs and renovations. Right now, the school district already has, we have 4 levies, or 4 funds, and our debt service fund already has a levy in it. So it already has money designated from property tax. A certain amount goes into that. And through some complicated calculations, we determine what our bonding capacity is, how much we can borrow. And for this year, our bonding capacity is right at about $9 million. And so when we say that's no tax, we're already putting that money in there. We're not having to increase the money we're asking from taxpayers for that. What we generate from your personal property tax is enough to make those payments with that much money. It's kind of like a home equity line of credit for your house, but for school districts. And then a tax levy we're asking for money. So right now we have so much in our operating levy, which is how we pay salaries, how we pay for supplies, how we pay for utilities and transportation and all of those things. And right now we're asking for that additional revenue. And with that additional revenue, it needs voter approval. And we need that voter approval to increase that operating tax. And that, like I said, that can be used for all of those things, and then you can use a certain percentage of that for other capital projects. So, and that is our intention, that the $9 million in the bond is for the capital projects and those improvements, and then the tax levy is for those daily operating costs that continue to rise every year for individuals and for agencies and organizations.
Good. Good, thank you. I understand it better than I did before.
Good.
I will also say that if you are on Facebook, there's a Facebook page for this issue, and it's a great place to put your questions and get an answer from somebody also, so that if a question comes up, go to Facebook and get friendly with those people because they're good. This question is for Charley Milkersman, Board of Education. Why did the Board of Education decide they needed a no tax bond issue and a tax levy increase at this April election?
Over the years, we have developed what I call a less formal strategic plan than what we've accomplished this time. And boards in the past have identified issues, both facilities, benefits, lacking in the salary structure and that sort of thing. And certainly the revenue was not there to accomplish that. More recently, as Sarah came aboard, we elected to bring in a area architectural firm to help us do a walkthrough of all the buildings. Fred, Dr. Marriott, and those people were involved in that walkthrough to identify those issues. What the board was wanting to see was a more finessed strategic plan. What exactly are the issues, and assess a cost to those issues. And this was what was accomplished over approximately a six-month period. And certainly it gave us a better tool to understand what revenues we needed to raise or identify to do facility repairs, to increase our salaries and that sort of thing. So with that being done, and again, most people have seen, it kind of blew us out of the water, so to speak, when we saw $30-some-odd million identified. And we had a committee, and then back through the board, we took a look at it, kind of whittling that down to about $21-22 million, trustfully to be accomplished over a period of years through phases. And with that being said, we immediately knew that we needed to maximize our bonding capacity on the no tax bond issue. And we were at a point with understanding that cannot be spent, as Dr. Marriott said, for recurring costs like salaries, benefits, that sort of thing. The only way that we accomplish the others, to be more competitive in benefits, to be more competitive in salaries, to purchase certain things that we needed to purchase, to do some of the smaller capital projects, is to raise that operating levy. And that was the necessity in doing that, and the board was very supportive of that decision.
Great, good, thank you. There's a kind of maybe this is a follow-up question that came, that's here, it's also addressed to you, Charley. How did the Board of Education make the decision to propose an April ballot measure? Does that make sense to you?
Not immediately, so.
Why now? Maybe it's why now.
My initial feel on that is why not now? Because if you take a look at other election cycles, you get into a certain different majority vote, and we felt that April was probably the prime time. And if we waited till next year, there's just another lag time of a year for us to approach this. And equally, we felt that the right thing to do by our employees, and we do value those, but we lessen that value somewhat if we're not willing to go in front of the voters to ask for money that's necessary to increase salaries, to look at other things that benefit not only our teachers, but all of our district employees. So the question became, why not now?
Good. That makes sense. Thank you. That does make sense. Dr. Marriott, back to you on this one. How will the additional revenue be used at the school district?
So with the no tax bond issue, we have an outline of projects out in the foyer. And really our intention with the no tax bond issue was to, one, maximize the use of the money, but then make sure that we are touching all of the buildings. That was extremely important to us because we didn't want it to be a focus on one building, and knowing that we have a variety of needs across the district, we wanted to impact all of our students. With regards to the tax levy issue, the primary purpose of that is to really, one, ease some of our financial burden that we're experiencing as a district, but then two, also really look at salaries and benefits for the staff, because they have indicated, as we have observed and also gathered data, that we are no longer a competitive employer when we look at our school district compared to other surrounding school districts. We are one of the lowest paying school districts for teachers starting out in their careers. And then also to look at some of those other areas of needs. Do we need to look at if math is an identified area of need for our district? Do we need to look at adding some additional supports and interventions? Do we need to look at restoring some positions that were eliminated in 2009, 2010? Do we need to look at student safety? And then also looking at we hear a lot about teachers having to buy their own supplies, and we want to make sure that our kids have what they need every day. And so that is going to help with some of those, what I would call day-to-day costs.
Good, thank you. Stephanie Green, this is for you. Has your name on it. Okay. You have worked for the Boonville schools for several years.
Thank you.
From a staff member's perspective, what are the needs for the Boonville schools?
Well, I think beyond the facilities needs, which we all definitely agree are necessary. I mean, when our plaster is falling on top of our kids' heads, that's not a good thing. So we have those facility needs definitely, just to provide safe and secure environments for them. But we also, our staff has to feel valued. And we've been very fortunate to have a very dedicated veteran staff for a long time. But I can tell you from personal experience that up until I took this position, I had already had my best 3 years of salary and as far as retirement was concerned. And so that's troubling because we have very educated teachers here, very devoted teachers here who are not being valued monetarily. And from a staff member's perspective, that does some negative things to morale. And it doesn't, that translates into what we're doing in the classrooms and what we're doing in the buildings. And the more we can support our teachers, the better our education system's going to be.
Wow, thank you.
Welcome.
Chad Stonesiver. I've been mentioned, Chad, he's on all kinds of community organizations. I should have told you that to begin with. There's just a variety of things that he's involved with in addition to this kind of an issue. So he's well versed in community issues. So this question has your name on it, Chad. Why are these ballot measures important to you?
Well, they're important to me because I've got 3 children. I've got 2 in the school district, and I want these are our children, and why not give them all the tools they need to reach the highest mountains? We have to pass these to keep teachers here. We need these teachers to stay with our kids. We've got great, talented teachers, and if we can't keep teachers or bring good teachers in, then what good are we doing? We've got to do this for our kids and for their futures.
How old are you? What grades are your students?
I have a freshman, I have a 3rd grader, and I got a daughter that is almost 4.
Oh man. Okay. Good. Good for you. Josie, question for you. Oh, that's good. What is one proposed project you are excited by if it passes?
I would for sure say that one of the things I'm excited by is the science lab updates. I was in chemistry last year, so obviously I was working very closely with the science lab, and there was some things that were very hard to do because there was, like, for example, in there right now there's a cracked fume hood. That's not safe if you have fumes just coming all up in your face while you're trying to do stuff. There's the safety shower, so like if you get any kind of chemicals on you or anything that would be able to like corrode your skin, then you would have to get into the safety shower. That's not the best condition right now. Yeah, it's about 20 or 30 years old. It seems like there's just a lot of necessary updates that come with that, and that would really be able to benefit our education in that realm. And so a lot of other students are very excited about that too.
Good, thank you. Charlie Milkersman, we were watching a video about their leaky roofs and the holes and the buckets on the floor and the panel, the tile that was stained and had to be replaced. So the question is, why are our buildings in such disrepair? Why, and the second question on here was, why hasn't something been done earlier?
Immediately you thought that's a multi-million-dollar question. I was thinking $1 million question, but now it's multi-million.
Just for you.
Yes. Going back, I've been on the board 14 years, and I've had the honor of serving 14 years. And first of all, I'd like to say what Chad said. What we do is all about the kids. That's our investment, and that's what the community sees through us as well. Over the years, and I will say this, and I will attest to this, as a board, we've been fiscal managers in how we spend money. And the state, not to lay blame there, but decreased the revenues that was coming into education several years ago when they reduced the formula. And then, didn't fully fund the formula. Then ultimately they reduced the state adequacy target and started fully funding a lesser amount. So, oops, I'm sorry. But that was part of it. So we weren't getting the revenues that we were accustomed to. And during that period of time, we equally had that recession period where we had to make cuts no different than other schools. But with that being said, the money, going back to the first year I was on board, was never there in essence to be able to put on a new roof, for instance, at the high school, or put a new roof on the LSE. We did get into a sufficient bonding issue, but at that time, we felt, and that was several years ago when we built Hannah Cole Primary, and we felt there was such a great need due to Central becoming really non-functional as a primary school, and $9+ million, that $12 million, I think, bond issue went toward building Hannah Cole, which was a must to have done. So you had a couple $1 million to do some other things. Soon thereafter, a few years thereafter, there was bonding capacity about $4 million, which we went back and redid some HVAC, not redid, we finished the district in HVAC as well too. And other than that, basically you had the tax levy, the operating revenue that was coming in, kind of meeting the daily needs. And when, I'll give you an instance, when I came on board, we had a significant leak at the high school, and just simply to repair that leak was $160,000.
Wow.
And I thought, when that was told to me that we were going to spend that amount of money, I thought, well, we're going to get a new roof. That was to fix a leak in that fashion. Now you see what the costs truly are to actually redo a roof on the buildings that we have. So the issue of the lack of funding has always been there. When the state reduced their actual, revenue that was being directed to school districts throughout the state, that truly impacted that, and that's never been back to where it once was. And again, we've not had a operating tax levy increase that could be found out really in at least 20 some odd years.
Say that again?
Sarah helped me out on that, but 1996 was a Proposition C adjustment. So when you go back over 20 years, for 22 years, 23 years, think of what the inflation has done. Utility costs have gone up and all those sort of things. It's not kept in track with what's taken place as well. So you're always behind the 8 ball, and especially the last 20+ years.
Oh, thank you. Okay, back to Dr. Marriott. Why can't the city of Boonville help with these projects?
And that's been a question that has been posed. And it's a good question because you look at two public entities working really essentially for very similar causes, and why can't they really help each other out? And the city has been a tremendous asset to the district. They've done some great things to help improve our facilities, but really they're two totally separate entities, two complete entities, and there's no overlap of funding. There's no oversight from the city to even have the obligation to maintain any of our buildings, and likewise, we would not maintain any of the city buildings. But the city does do a lot of good things, but as being directly responsible for fixing our buildings is our responsibility. We need to do that as a school district and not rely on other entities that also are working to improve life in Boonville and our community to be responsible for that. Two different things.
It is a good question. It's
Yeah.
just, everybody thinks the city has all this money.
Right.
Right? Chad, this is for you. Regarding this campaign you're talking about, what is most important to you as a parent?
As a parent, the future success of my children in this school district, to have the opportunity to learn and grow and get the proper education that they need. It's the most important. It's why we're doing this. And if others can't see it out in the community, they can find me at Walmart at least 5 days a week.
Thank you. And that phone number again, your phone number again is, Josie, I'm back to you now. Other than the science lab, how will these ballot measures help students? List as many ways as that come to you like that.
Well, there's, of course, several different ways that it can help students. Well, one thing's for sure is that heating and cooling systems and a new roof would obviously help very much. Like, for example, down at the B-Tech, there's been a couple times this year where the heat's gone out while we're in the middle of winter, and it's just completely cold out there. And like in my Spanish class the other day, the heat stopped working and it was just blowing cold air, and they couldn't get it to shut off. So stuff like that, it's hard to concentrate whenever that's happening, or if it's raining outside and then there's buckets in the classroom, or like they have to come in and take out the tile in the roof, or it starts leaking on your head. Of course, that makes it really hard to concentrate, and it makes it hard to just focus on what you need to get done and things like that. So those are two major things that would really be able to help us.
You're a student council, aren't you?
Yes.
So when it's raining and leaking in the roof and it's cold and whatever, do you see that affecting the morale of the students in the classroom?
Definitely. Of course, they come up a lot of times, they're like, we need a new roof. The kids say that themselves. It's not just teachers, it's not just parents. They're like, we need to get this fixed. The students do realize that these problems are happening. And a lot of times, it's not just because it's rainy, it's also because there's these things happening in the classroom. Of course, no one likes it when the roof leaks or when the heat goes out and stuff like that. So you can definitely see it in the kids whenever stuff like that happens. It's just dejection, really.
Wow, dejection. I heard that. Okay, Dr. Marriott, this is the question everybody's asking. Tell us about the soccer fields. What was the school district's role in building them?
Well, we didn't build them, but what we did do a few years ago, the soccer complex was built by a voter-approved CIP tax through the city, and it had nothing to do with the school district. What the school did is we donated use of the land, some of our land for development. We still own our property. The city doesn't own it. They developed and put fields on some of our property. So north of the high school, we still own those fields. We still own our football field. We own half of the championship field. The city owns the fields to the south. The city is responsible for maintaining the turf on those fields, with the exception of our football field, because we built that and we purchased that turf. And we'll continue to maintain our property. So there was some questions about, well, I see the school district employees mowing the grass. Well, of course we're gonna mow our own grass. We're not gonna have the city come in and mow our grass. We're gonna continue to mow our grass. We own that. And I think it's going to be a good thing. It helps our campus. Our soccer team is using it. The city has that open policy. If our soccer team wants to use the fields, which they chose to do, they can do that. And the baseball team practiced in their soft sole shoes, not their cleats, on the turf, when the weather's not great. But, that's a valid question because it's right there. It's around our campus. It looks like the school built that. And so I can see why people think that, why in the world did the school district spend all of that money on soccer fields when they have all of these issues? In reality, no, that's not what happened. The voters, including myself, voted to approve that tax through the city years ago. And through a combination and a collaboration with the city and the school district, they made best use of land that we were not using.
Good. I hope that is clear once and for all.
I will answer that question as many times as people need me to.
Charley, you mentioned a little while ago that that the board was going to have this facilities plan. This is a good question for you. Does the Board of Education have a facilities plan for the future? What is the facilities plan?
Yes, when we partnered with this architectural firm to do what we did in the past year, and again, it was about a 6-month process, and the same architectural firm had the experience of doing this for other schools like, Southern Boone, Columbia Public Schools, et cetera. And they helped put in place not only what some of the most immediate needs were, which we're identifying and has been identified out here, as you see, in the lobby area and et cetera, but they also have worked with those same schools that when you read an article, say for instance, Columbia Public Schools, they not only explain what they're doing now, but in the next 10 years, what will they be doing and what sort of money or revenue was necessary to do those sort of things. And this is what we've done. So we have a much clearer picture of not only what we need to do now in the immediate future, but what those phases need to be, bonding capacities, how to spend this money, this operating tax levy increase, how to kind of delve that out over the period of time, both for salaries and other things, et cetera. Okay. But so there's a game plan to that, something that we've never had before, but it's really given us a very detailed picture, not only for the board, but our administrators as well.
Good. Thank you. Good question. Good answer. Stephanie Green.
Yes, sir.
Why do teachers have to buy their own supplies? Do we not give them enough money for the classroom?
We don't give them enough money for their classrooms to provide the things that their students need, especially in today's world. We have not increased our budgets on classroom supplies in at least 5 years, I would guess, probably more. I know as a teacher, when I was in the classroom, our whole department had $250 for the year to buy supplies, and that had to buy ink for our printers in our rooms. It had to buy anything else that we needed that didn't come out of general supplies, which we do buy bulk general supplies for the entire district, but or for the school buildings. So a lot of teachers just want better for the kids. They want their kids to have what they need, and so they are willing to dip into their own pockets to do it. KOMU came over and did a piece with our ELA 6th grade teacher, Jamie Boyd, and she showed them what our kids really need to be successful in her classroom and how much money she spends on her own, which was probably, we were talking about the new legislation that was going to increase teacher income tax credit, yes, up to about $750 a year from $200 or $250. And so, but $750 for a lot of teachers, especially if they're science teachers who are buying, supplies that their kids need to do experiments, that's not enough. $250 for 6 people in a department is not very much. So that's definitely a critical thing for our teachers, especially considering that their income hasn't kept up with the cost of living. So when they have to go out and buy materials to do labs, that's a big expense for them.
I have a follow-up question for you on that regard. Can you give us an example specifically of what a teacher, say at Hannah Cole, at David Barton, some of those, I know you're not there, but what kind of things do they buy for their students out of their pocket?
Sometimes it's something as simple as composition notebooks, which they'll go, when school supplies are on sale, and buy extra notebooks, because our kids don't come with everything they need all the time. They'll buy pencils. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but when you're supplying, 100 kids a day, and you're doing that over a period of time, it adds up. They'll buy just organizational tools for kids, motivational posters, anything that will help increase kids' learning. They'll buy They'll buy educational books for kids in the classrooms, activity books, things like that that they can use that are reproducible. So they spend a lot of time and effort figuring out what the kids need. And that's, I mean, it's not frivolous, you know, they're not always just buying borders for their bulletin boards. They're buying things that the kids are using to learn.
Good, thank you. That helps. Chad, you mentioned your student, you have two of them, they're in school here now. Do you have any concerns about student safety? And a follow-up on that one is, how will these ballot measures address your concerns?
Yes, for the first one.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Some safety concerns, you know, if this passes, I like to say when it passes, you know, our school resource officer is a very important thing. You know, we're one of the few schools of our size around that doesn't have one. And it's great for the kids, the interaction, the safety that they feel inside their school, and somebody else for them to go to. They've got teachers, but a teacher's got 30 kids in a classroom on average, and sometimes they can't get to every student every day. And that child may see that resource officer, that may be their go-to, that makes them feel comfortable. Just like, you know, being at home with a parent that they may not have a close relationship to, but they built something strong with that resource officer in all the schools. You know, our kids need that. Safety of, you know, doing a test and a piece of roof fall on your head. I mean, that'd be an awesome situation to have happen.
Yep.
I wouldn't want my kids to be involved in that. I wouldn't want that to happen to them, and I don't think anybody else would either. Our structure being sound for our kids is very important.
Thank you. Dr. Marriott, I'm going to follow up with you on that question. Tell us how you go about employing a resource officer.
So we've done some initial discussions with other school districts to see how they employ their school resource officer, to see how many they have, if they have them, and what their tie is or their relationship is with, and it depends on the school. Some will seek assistance or that connection with the sheriff's department, and some will go through the local police department. Since we primarily serve students in our school buildings are within the city limits of Boonville, we've made some initial contact with the city of Boonville to talk with them about and what that potential relationship can look like. And so the information that we've received right now and really considering if we do move forward with that would be to retain a Boonville police officer. That person would remain a Boonville police officer, and then we would reimburse or pay for that person's salary while they are here employed, dedicated full-time employee to our district.
Good, thank you. Clears that for me. Josie, what do students see as needs?
Well, today I asked a couple of them, like, what do you guys think you could see improve in the building? And I've said it before a couple times, but the roof and the heating and cooling systems, especially down at the B-Tech. But a couple other ones were lockers. Like, for example, some of them don't shut all the way. And so if you have like some stuff in there that you don't obviously want other people going around through, then you would want to make sure that your locker can shut at least. And so sometimes they're also not big enough. Like, for example, I can't put my coat in my locker along with my backpack and like a lunchbox and all my books. There's just not room. So I have to go and put my coat in a different room, like for a different teacher's room for stuff like that. The parking lots also too. Like every morning when I come into the commons lot, I've got to dodge a couple potholes. So things like that, just basic repairs that we could see throughout the building. Those are big things that we see that we would need.
Thank you. Back to Dr. Marriott. So, I've looked at my property tax bill, and so much of it already goes to the schools. Why is that not enough?
That's a great question. Mm-hmm. And you're right. When you do look at your property tax statement, and I shared earlier today, I was having a conversation with my grandma about that, which was kind of funny because she says, Look how much already goes to the school. You're right, Grandma, a lot goes to the school. But we receive about 53% of our total budget from local funds. And so when we have to rely on that much of our just day-to-day operating expenses, 53% from local funds, that's why that property tax is so much. And then also on a side note of my thought and philosophy is that the community is responsible for investing in education. And we have to be responsible as a community, and that means financial commitment as well as other supports that we can provide. And you may have heard my spiel already, but you have to have, it's imperative for communities to continue to thrive. They have to have a strong public educational system. When those systems fail, your communities fail. And so we have to continue to invest in that. And that means tax dollars, and that means money coming from the community because we have to maintain high level, high quality education.
Got it. Good. Thank you. Good answer to that question. Back to Mr. Melkersman. Along that line, I hear property is being reassessed. It's in the news. Won't this take care of the district's needs?
First response, no. Again, in that I work in the courthouse as commissioner, I'm close to what is going on in the assessor's office. Now, I do not even begin to say I'm speaking for the assessor. That in itself is very complex. I think Christy Lenhart has done a great job in coming out in front of the community and indicating what's being taken place. But even after that, she asked me my thoughts on the first such presentation. I said, Christy, I still don't quite understand it, but with that being said, there is a reassessment going on. I'll try to put it in best that I understand it, is that over the past few years, the reassessments that are required by state statute has not been done. So it is what it is. We're at a 79% threshold right now. The state has indicated to our county assessor's office that we need to be minimally within a very reasonable period of time to be at 90% threshold, somewhere between 90% and 110%. What our county assessor has indicated is that, she wants to do that in increments so it doesn't, just, in a way impact people pretty significantly in the first few years, to spread it out to where she'll be doing land, which really doesn't increase or have a significant impact on taxes and the revenue that would be affected by that with a school. So it's really probably a 5-year period of time that will be accomplished. Over a period of time, it will have some effect, but it's not going to be the effect that some people may see or hear. They hear of some numbers. Those numbers are basically an increase in the county's valuation. And as a county, we have grown. When I went in as county commissioner, we were around, if I recall right, somewhere around 240, and that's county, not the Boonville R1 school district, around 242, something like that, and we're approaching $250 million as a county. But she has a job in front of her that's mandated, or that office and the county actually loses funding out of that.
Okay.
And I might say too, that whatever's being done there, there's still always going to be a lag of 1 year before that revenue comes back, whatever that revenue may be, to the local school districts.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Stephanie Green? I don't think there's a tornado warning.
No.
This is just the checkup for the spring, I think, to see if the sirens work.
I thought
We're all
it was
okay.
just calling me, I didn't know. They usually do that when I talk.
Stephanie, why is it important to evaluate staff salaries? Number one, wait a minute.
Okay.
And does the current salary schedule inhibit recruitment of new staff? Oh, wow. Okay.
So we have to look at staff salaries in order for us to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers, which I think is what everyone wants for their children. We have to be competitive, and we are not competitive right now. So looking at our staff salaries, which have only had about $1,000 increase in the last 12 years, is that right? 12 years, our teachers and our non-certificated staff have had that much of a raise in 12 years. And so for us to remain competitive and be able to go out and recruit teachers and people into this community that we want to bring in, and we want them to settle here, and we want them to be invested in our future as a community and our children's future, we have to be able to provide them with the financial resources they need. And right now we aren't competitive with that. We're sitting out of the surrounding 18 school districts, we're at the bottom of that. So we are behind Pilot Grove in salaries for our teachers and our non-certificated staff. And so that's, you know, these smaller districts are drawing our teachers away. I mean, they're not all going to Columbia, which we know is going to be hard to compete with, but we have a lot of very valuable resources here for our teachers. Being a small community, our school district is the right size to be very, very interpersonal with our students, with our parents, with the community. So they're not too big. They're not in classes of, 35 and 40 kids. But our teachers need to be compensated for the work that they do, for staying here for years and years and years without a raise, and just for the dedication that they've shown. So it's vital for us to look at where we're spending money, and our most valuable resources beyond our children are the people who are educating them.
Good, thank you. Good answer. Josie, from a student's perspective, why should taxpayers support these issues from your perspective?
That's a very good question. I would say that the students that the district is in charge of, we are the future of this community. We're future leaders of any sector that we would go into. So that being said, we would need to start with a good education, and going into that, like, you couldn't be able to go into that field that you would want to go into without being educated. And so if there's these problems with our buildings, or if the teachers aren't motivated, then there's no way that you're going to be able to get that good education that you would need. So that being said, we really would appreciate it if those things could happen. So, and that in turn, it would affect our community as well too, if our schools are successful.
I told you she was smart. Stephanie Green, tell me about the technology needs of the district.
So our technology, we are very, very fortunate that our technology director is brilliant, and he's beyond brilliant. We're very fortunate to have him. And he's able to do a lot for us that a lot of other districts can't have done just because of his skills. And we work very hard to keep our kids as close to the forefront of technology as we can get them. Just having computers is not technology, and it's not using technology for educational purposes. There's an actual model of how to use technology for educational purposes, and we need to be able to get there. And what we need to be able to do to get there is we need to be able to train our teachers, and we need to be able to hire and retain qualified teachers to do that. We need to be able to have programs that build on all of those technology pieces. We need to be able to fund our Project Lead the Ways programs, because they're vital to what we're looking at in the STEAM and STEM initiatives across the nation, where we want young people involved in projects that aren't just using a computer to type a paper, but they're using a computer to create a new product, a new innovation. And we have to have not just the devices and the hardware to do that, but we have to have the training as well. So part of that technology piece is really built in how we train our teachers, the teachers that we hire to do those programs with our students, and the opportunities that we provide our students to use equipment that is up to date. Not just in the science labs, but across the whole district. We have some, 3D printers, which are kind of a common thing now. They weren't so common a few years ago. How are we using those? Are our kids creating things that are, going out and developing new ideas for businesses? And all of the things that we want, the skills we want our kids to have are all wrapped up in technology. That's the world that we live in. Of course, they have to have some foundational skills too, but we have to be able to provide opportunities for them with our technology, and some of that is buying equipment, it is buying devices, it is keeping our infrastructure sound, which Mr. Carpenter does a fantastic job of. But until we recognize that our students have to be provided the opportunities to build skills with those devices and give them the training, give our teachers the training, then our technology is going to be, we're always going to be behind the technology ball, that everybody is. But when kids can, I was just sharing a story with them earlier that one of our middle school kids actually hacked into our formative assessment program. So our kids are brilliant. They are technologically brilliant, but we need to harness that, and we need to give them more opportunities, not to hack into programs like that, but to develop something from that that is positive and productive for our community, for our country, for their futures too. Just that's where they're headed.
Good. They are smart, aren't they?
They are smart.
Chad, question for you. You are a member of Booster Club.
Yes.
How do they support the school?
Boonville Booster Club supports a school. We buy athletic equipment for all athletics. Most of the equipment bought are things that are not in the budget for the kids to get for the sports that they need. And so the Booster Club, we hold fundraisers throughout the year, and we help supply items that each group needs.
You mean like football helmets and pads and?
No, not necessarily. Those kind of things are in a budget.
Okay.
And it's spaced out over so many years. Certain things meet certain criteria on replacement.
Okay.
And so those kind of things are figured in.
Good, thank you. Dr. Marriott, how does the boat help the school?
That's another question we hear a lot about too. Doesn't the boat, gambling money is supposed to be extremely beneficial, and since we have a boat right here in Boonville, doesn't that directly support our school district? Well, the boat has been fantastic for Boonville. It definitely has impacted our school district in a positive way. However, the boat, gambling money, all gambling revenues, boat money, lottery money, it all goes into a pool of funding at the state level. And so after the state does whatever they do, there's a calculation for each school district, and based on that calculation, it's dispersed amongst all school districts across the state of Missouri. So even though we have a boat casino in our community, there's no direct benefit to our school district. Now, again, the boat has done terrific things for our school district, but there's no direct financial impact to the school district from that. We receive the gambling money through Classroom Trust Fund is what it's called, and there's a calculation, a formula calculation that we receive a payment of that, but again, that's all school districts in the state of Missouri receive that formula, that calculation payment.
So you mean that when I don't go to the boat, but I see on television that every dollar that is spent for a lottery ticket, whatever those things are, all that money goes to the schools?
Well, I'm sure there's administrative costs that come off the top of that, but I'm not, of the lottery pool, but I'm not sure of how much because I don't have their financial revenues. We just receive, hey, education, there's this much money for public education based on gambling revenues, and here's our formula, here's how much you're going to receive for that.
Okay. And then this is the last card I have. And then I'm going to open it to the floor. This is for all of you together, individually, but any final thoughts or comments? Anybody have a thing that they've been dying to say but didn't get a chance to say it?
If I might say, and Sarah presented this morning in a conversation in coffee, an excellent answer to a question about, again, taxes, and, we pay a major portion of those taxes that we see, whether it's property or real estate that goes to school. Excellent job in that explanation. But when you see what our teachers do, when you see what our non-certificated employees do, the paraprofessionals, the custodians, all that, it's truly all about the kids. And the kids are the ones that, as we grow as a community, they're the ones that keep that growth there with us. They take us forward. And, you know, the old cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. You know, we've got multiple children out there that we need to have a direct impact on. And it comes down to the financial side of that as well, too. And we need to step up and do what's necessary to take care of our kids.
Good, thank you, well said. Any other thoughts?
There's a very good graphic that is, that was put out on the Facebook page, the building Facebook page, that shows where our tax levy is compared to surrounding districts, including Columbia, and how really how much less we pay as property tax owners compared to even places like Sturgeon and Harrisburg. And so I think it's pretty prudent for people to get out and look at that and see how very blessed and fortunate we've been to retain all of these wonderful employees for so long without increasing our taxes up until now.
Why do you think that's true? We talked about that this morning at coffee. Why do you think they stay in Boonville and teach when they don't get paid like they can other places?
Because it's a great place to work. We say that a lot, but it is a great place to work. Right. Our leadership is strong and progressive, and we have wonderful community that supports everything we do. Everything we do. We ask and we receive from our community, and you could not ask for more than that. And our teachers feel like it's home here.
And I just wanted to add to that. This was not, the decision to put both of these ballot measures on the April ballot was not a decision that was taken lightly. That the board discussed this for a long time. They put a lot of thought into it because we know we're all taxpayers. We know what that impact is. We know where our community is, where we're sitting at a 79% free and reduced lunch rate for our students. We understand when we say we need more money, what that does to our community. But then on the other side, again, going back to that necessity that we have to invest in our public education system. And so it wasn't just this flippant decision that, hey, let's go ask for money because we need to fix these things or we need raises. No, there was a lot of thought put into it. There was a lot of, well, you know, how's this going to impact our community? How's that going to impact the average person? If they're having difficulty making ends meet as it is and we're asking them for more money, we understand that, we get that, and we did think about that. And unfortunately, though, we're in the situation that probably several other schools could be in, but we are in that particular situation where, you know, 20 years ago, that gap wasn't there, and it just has gradually increased and increased and increased to where we are today, where inflation and cost of everything have just so significantly increased, but our revenues haven't kept pace. And so we have to make decisions. And unfortunately, it's not an ultimatum, but if these things don't pass, we have to look at other options for our district. And, you know, whether that means we're going to be patching roofs or if we're going to be looking at personnel and deciding whether we're going to rehire and renew teachers that are leaving our district, if we can fill those positions. Those are some of the very hard decisions that the Board of Education and the staff has to make. And they take their job very seriously. And I appreciate that about them tremendously because they all do very much have the intention of doing what's best for kids in a high quality public education. That's always at the forefront of everything that they do and everything they think about. And I think that's exactly why our teachers stay, because that's what they do every day and they love it. And we've been so extremely fortunate that the staff that we have has, despite everything else, they love being here. It's why I'm back. I love being here. I love Boonville. I graduated from here. I'm a pirate. I'm invested in this, as a lot of other people are here. But I think that just speaks to the dedication of the people that we have. Even when we have roofs falling in, we still have amazing kids. You know, they're still doing fantastic things, and we have to keep that.
I'm just going to add my footnote to that what you just said, because it's really tearing me up here. Nancy and I went to the school board meeting last week. First
It was
one
a
I've been
long,
to.
boring
Sorry?
one, too.
Long,
It was long, boring.
very long. Wasn't boring. It was fascinating. But what I heard was, and some of the school board members are here tonight. The great questions, the depth of the discussion, the sincerity of the heart of these people that serve on that school board in asking the questions about why are we doing the things that we're doing, that there was a proposal on the table, and I'm not going into that proposal, but it was a really good one. And I just came away from that saying, we've got some really good people on the Board of Education, and I applaud you folks for doing that, and Charley for doing that, and
Thank you.
Sarah for putting up with them, I guess. Anything else from you? I just got to give you applause. I think you did a great job. Thank you, Bertie. Any questions from the floor? Just anybody, just any question you might have.
I have a question about the minimum wage increase that passed. Do you have staff that will be impacted by that? And if so, do you know what the annual cost of that will be each year?
So public schools, it's an interesting little conundrum that we have. So public school employees are actually exempt from the minimum wage increase. However, if we're gonna keep our employees, we can't pay them below minimum wage. So right now, we don't have that direct impact from the minimum wage increase as to where it is currently, but in the years coming up, if we want to be competitive with our employees that are on an hourly wage, we're going to have to look at that increase and decide what we want to do. Now, of course, because we're public education, they can choose to not follow those guidelines, but I anticipate that the board will probably move in a different direction and want to keep pace with that.
And then a question on the reassessment. Do you have any idea with the reassessment how much it could potentially impact?
So reassessment, and I did check with our bonding agency because I wanted to make sure I was correct on this. So our assessor has stated that the potential impact to our assessed valuation of the district, so that's how much our district is valued at. The potential impact is that it could increase by about $3 million. That does not mean the school district is getting $3 million. What that means is that you put that into a calculation, and the most that we would receive after all the reassessments are completed would be about $136,000. Now, what will actually probably happen is that there's something called the Hancock Amendment will kick in, and we will actually be revenue neutral, and we will receive no benefit from that increase. For the district to receive any significant financial increase because of assessed valuation, we would have to increase our assessed valuation by $15 million.
Wow, good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, are we adjourned?
We're done. Oh, and there's plenty of food.
Plenty of food.
There's a giant cheese ball.
The cheese ball is really good.
Because Glenda is the best.
I was just saying.